There is a cry that rises from the depth of a man when he has come to the end of himself, when explanations fail, when strength bows, when help from familiar places dries up, and that cry is not noise, it is not complaint, it is a petition forged in brokenness and faith. O God, trouble them that trouble me. This is not the prayer of arrogance, it is the prayer of alignment. It is the language of a man who has discovered that life is not neutral, that existence is not a playground, that destiny is contended for, and that behind visible resistance there are invisible intelligences that sponsor frustration, delay, and pain. Many believers want peace without confrontation, victory without battle, testimony without warfare, but the economy of the kingdom does not work that way. If you will rise in destiny, something must bow. If you will advance in purpose, something must be resisted. There are forces that do not respond to tears, they respond to authority. There are gates that do not open because you are sincere, they open because you are aligned with the God who troubles those that trouble his covenant people. Understand this, not every trouble in a man's life is accidental. There are patterns of affliction, cycles of failure, recurring disappointments that betray intelligence. When a man keeps running but remains on the same spot, when effort does not translate to progress, when prayer seems sincere yet results are inconsistent, wisdom demands that you discern. Discernment is not suspicion, it is spiritual intelligence. There are times when God trains you, and there are times when God defends you. There are seasons when God is shaping your character, and there are seasons when God is revealing his power. To confuse the two is costly. You do not rebuke what you should learn from, and you do not endure what you should confront. Many endure what God asked them to confront, calling it humility, when in truth it is ignorance. Humility is not weakness. Humility is alignment with truth. And truth is that the God of the Bible is not only a shepherd, he is a man of war. He is gentle with his children, but terrible with their enemies. When you pray, O God, trouble them that trouble me, you are not asking God to be wicked, you are asking God to be just. Justice is not silence. Justice is not indifference. Justice is the accurate response of God to anything that violates his will and his word in your life. There are things that have sworn that you will not rise, that your voice will not be heard, that your impact will be small, that your joy will be short-lived. These things do not negotiate, they enforce. They enforce by fear, by delay, by confusion, by repeated loss, and God watches to see whether you will stand in ignorance or rise in understanding. Authority in the Spirit is not obtained by shouting, it is obtained by revelation. When you know who you are and you know who he is, prayer becomes legislation. You are no longer begging, you are aligning heaven against anything that resists the counsel of God over your life. There is a version of Christianity that is passive, one that celebrates endurance without victory, one that glorifies suffering without purpose. That version is not the faith of Scripture. The faith of Scripture is a triumphant faith. It acknowledges trials, yes, but it insists on overcoming. It recognizes enemies, yes, but it insists on subduing them. You cannot read Scripture honestly and not see that God consistently intervenes on behalf of his people. Seas part, walls fall, kings lose sleep, enemies scatter, not because the people were many, but because God stood behind them. The tragedy is that many believers know the promises of God, but do not know the ways of God. They quote scriptures but lack posture. They have information without formation. They want God to trouble their enemies, but they have not submitted themselves to his dealings. Authority flows from alignment. You cannot be in rebellion and expect God to fight for you. You cannot live carelessly and expect precision in the Spirit. When a man's ways please the Lord, even his enemies are forced into peace, and when peace is not the assignment, those enemies are forced into defeat. There are seasons when God allows trouble to test your depth, to reveal what is in you, to separate ambition from assignment. But there are seasons when trouble overstays its welcome. There are seasons when affliction is no longer training, it is oppression. How do you know the difference? Fruit, Training produces growth. Oppression produces stagnation. Training stretches you but moves you forward. Oppression exhausts you and keeps you in circles. When you discern oppression, silence is not wisdom. Silence in the face of spiritual aggression is consent. The spirit realm respects boundaries, and boundaries are enforced by authority. That is why prayer is not optional, it is survival. Prayer is how men enforce the verdicts of heaven upon the earth. Prayer is how you invite God into the affairs of men. Not every battle is won by strategy. Some are won by surrender, but surrender is not passivity. Surrender is yielding to the God who fights for you. When you say, "O God, trouble them that trouble me," you are acknowledging that you cannot fight alone. Self-sufficiency is dangerous in the spirit. The moment you think you can handle life by intellect, by connections, by effort alone, you have exposed yourself. There are battles that ignore your qualifications. There are oppositions that laugh at your resumes. There are resistances that do not respect your sincerity. They respect the God who backs you. That is why intimacy with God is not a luxury. It is your greatest defense. Many want power without presence, influence without intimacy, results without relationship. It does not work. The men who command results in the spirit are men who have learned to host God. When God rests upon a man, trouble avoids him, and when trouble insists, God rises. Do not envy the wicked when they prosper, for there is a way God troubles those who trouble his people. Sometimes he troubles their peace, sometimes he troubles their counsel, sometimes he troubles their strength. Sometimes he troubles their timing. He does not always strike immediately, but he is always precise. The delay of judgment is not the absence of judgment. God is patient, but patience is not weakness. There are people who think because they have resisted you for years, because they have mocked your faith, because they have manipulated systems against you, that God has endorsed them. They mistake silence for approval. But there is a day when God steps in, and when he does, explanations are unnecessary. You will not need to defend yourself. God will defend you. Your responsibility is to stay aligned, to stay clean, to stay yielded. Vengeance is not yours, it is his. Your assignment is obedience. His assignment is defense. There is also a caution here. The prayer, "O God, trouble them that trouble me," is not a license for bitterness. Bitterness disqualifies authority. You do not pray this prayer from hatred. You pray it from covenant. You are not asking God to satisfy your ego. You are asking God to protect his purpose. When David prayed against his enemies, it was not insecurity, it was assignment. He knew that if those enemies succeeded, the counsel of God over Israel would be compromised. You must discern the difference between personal offense and destiny opposition. Not everyone who disagrees with you is your enemy. Not every delay is an attack. Wisdom discerns, but when you have discerned correctly, pray boldly. God is not intimidated by your faith. He is honored by it. Many believers whisper prayers that should be declared. There is a place for quietness, but there is also a place for proclamation. The spirit realm responds to clarity. When you are unsure, you pray for guidance. When you are sure, you pray for enforcement. There are times when you stop asking God what is wrong and start declaring what must change. That is not pride, that is partnership. God is looking for men and women who will stand in the gap, who will say, "As for me and my house, this affliction ends here." Someone has to be the interruption in the lineage. Someone has to be the breaker of cycles. Someone has to say, "This pattern saw my father, but it will not see my children." Heaven responds to such men. Do not underestimate the power of consistent alignment. One prayer does not replace a life of obedience. You cannot live contrary to the principles of God and then use prayer as an emergency tool. Prayer is not magic. It is relationship expressed. When your life contradicts your prayer, confusion results. But when your life reinforces your prayer, power is released. The God who troubles your enemies is the same God who demands your consecration. He will not fight for what you refuse to steward. He will not defend what you dishonor. If you want God to trouble them that trouble you, then you must refuse to trouble God with disobedience. Holiness is not an outdated word. It is your security system. Righteousness is not legalism. It is your covering. There are mysteries in timing. Sometimes God waits until the opposition has fully revealed itself, so that when he acts, there is no debate about the source of the victory. Sometimes he allows Goliath to shout so that when Goliath falls, fear leaves the camp permanently. Do not rush God, but do not doubt him. Waiting is not wasting when God is involved. However, while you wait, prepare. Build capacity, strengthen your inner man, grow in understanding. Because when God troubles your enemies, he often promotes you, and promotion without capacity is another kind of trouble. Many prayed for deliverance, but were not ready for the responsibility that followed. God is not only interested in removing pain, he is interested in revealing sons. So when the pressure increases, when the resistance intensifies, do not assume you are failing. Sometimes pressure is a sign that something is about to give. Sometimes darkness gathers because light is near. Stand firm, lift your eyes beyond the visible, speak with understanding, align with heaven. And from that place, with a heart free from bitterness and a life yielded to obedience, you can stand and say, not as a threat, but as a declaration of covenant, O God, trouble them that trouble me. Knowing that the judge of all the earth will do right, that he will rise in defense of his word, that he will vindicate his name in your life, and that as he does, your testimony will not just be that you survived, but that you emerged, that what was meant to break, you became the platform upon which his power was revealed, and as the days unfold and the seasons shift, you will look back and realize that every resistance was an invitation into deeper authority, deeper trust, deeper manifestation, because when God steps into the equation, trouble changes hands, battles change owners, and the narrative begins to shift in ways that only eternity can fully explain, and you find yourself standing in awe, watching how what once pursued you now flees, how what once mocked you now bows, and how the very systems that resisted your rising are reconfigured to announce that there is a God who answers when his people cry, a God who watches over his word to perform it, a God who does not abandon his own, and as you continue to walk with him, discerning seasons, guarding your heart, sharpening your spirit, you begin to understand that this prayer is not just about enemies, it is about alignment with a kingdom that cannot be resisted, a will that cannot be overturned, a purpose that cannot be buried, and as long as you remain in that alignment, every challenge becomes material for testimony, every opposition becomes evidence of proximity to destiny, and every cry you lift is met by a God who still intervenes in the affairs of men, who still troubles those that trouble his people, and who still reigns supreme over all. And as you walk with this understanding, you begin to realize that spiritual warfare is not noise, it is posture. The loudest voices in the spirit realm are not always the ones shouting, they are the ones standing correctly. Hell does not fear your vocabulary, it fears your alignment. When a man is aligned, even his silence speaks. There is a way a believer carries himself when he knows that heaven backs him. Fear loses its grip. Panic loses its voice, intimidation loses its power. This is why the enemy works tirelessly to attack identity before destiny. If he can confuse you about who you are, he can delay what you are meant to become. Many troubles persist because believers are fighting battles from the wrong identity. You do not fight as a victim, you fight as a son. Sons do not negotiate inheritance, they enforce it. There is also the mystery of persistence. Some battles do not end because you prayed once. They end because you stood until the atmosphere changed. Persistence is not unbelief. Persistence is faith refusing to bow to contradiction. Elijah prayed once and nothing happened, yet he prayed again, not because God was deaf, but because systems sometimes resist change until authority is sustained. When you pray, you are not informing God, you are enforcing His will, and enforcement often requires consistency. Many believers quit too early, not because the answer was not coming, but because the pressure increased. Pressure is not proof of defeat. Often it is proof that something is resisting displacement. Stay there. Hold your ground. Let your prayer mature from request to command, from command to declaration, from declaration to rest. Rest is also spiritual. Rest is not the absence of battle. Rest is confidence in who is fighting for you. There is a place you arrive at where your heart is quiet even while circumstances are loud. That quietness is not ignorance, it is assurance. David faced Goliath with rest. He ran, not because he was anxious, but because he was convinced. Conviction produces speed. Doubt produces delay. When you know that God will trouble them that trouble you, you stop begging life for permission. You stop apologizing for obedience. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Boldness is not arrogance. Boldness is clarity. When a man is clear about his assignment, resistance becomes irrelevant. Be careful also not to internalize warfare. Not every battle is about you. Sometimes you are a target because of what you carry. Sometimes the resistance you face is not personal, it is territorial. There are territories that do not want light, systems that do not want righteousness, cultures that resist truth. When you show up with conviction, you disrupt balances that were sustained by compromise. Expect resistance, but do not personalize it. If you personalize warfare, you will grow bitter. If you spiritualize it correctly, you will grow authoritative. Jesus was hated, not because he was rude, but because he was true. Truth is confrontational by nature. Light does not argue with darkness, it exposes it, and hear this carefully. God does not always remove your enemies. Sometimes he trains you in their presence. There are skills you learn under pressure that you cannot learn in comfort. There is discernment that is sharpened only when stakes are high. There is prayer that becomes real only when survival depends on it. Do not despise the season of opposition. Discern it. Ask God what He is building in you while He is dealing with what is against you. Because when God troubles those that trouble you, He often does it in a way that leaves you wiser, deeper, more grounded. He is not just interested in winning battles. He is interested in raising men. There is also the law of representation. When you stand, you are not standing alone. You represent generations before you and generations after you. Some of the troubles you face are ancient, older than your name, older than your choices. They are patterns that have learned the family, learned the environment, learned the weaknesses, but they have not learned your covenant. Covenant changes the rules. When covenant enters a bloodline, history is interrupted. This is why your prayer matters. This is why your obedience matters. This is why your refusal to quit matters. You are not just fighting for relief. You are fighting for legacy. Do not envy shortcuts. Many who bypass warfare also bypass authority. Authority is expensive. It costs tears, waiting, discipline, and obedience. But when it comes, it lasts. Those who rise cheaply fall quickly. When God lifts you after trouble, He roots you. When God defends you, He establishes you. There are victories that announce you, and there are victories that stabilize you. Both matter. Sometimes God allows you to fight quietly so that when you are revealed, you are not fragile. Hidden battles produce public strength. That is why some of your hardest fights have no audience. Heaven is the witness. As you continue, learn the language of thanksgiving even before the battle ends. Thanksgiving is prophetic. It speaks to the future as though it has already arrived. Thanksgiving is not denial, it is faith. When Paul and Silas sang in prison, chains fell not because singing is magic, but because worship aligns you with the God who intervenes. Complaining aligns you with defeat. Worship aligns you with victory. Choose your alignment carefully. What you magnify determines what dominates. If you magnify trouble, it will grow. If you magnify God, trouble will shrink. Perspective is power, and when God begins to trouble those that trouble you, do not rush to explain yourself. Silence is sometimes the loudest testimony. Let results speak. Let fruit answer critics. Let consistency silence doubters. God does not need your help to defend his name. He only needs your cooperation. There is dignity in restraint. There is strength in patience. Not every victory needs commentary. Some victories are sealed by quiet confidence. Guard your heart in seasons of victory as much as in seasons of warfare. Pride after victory can reopen doors that humility closed. Remember where you came from. Remember who helped you. Remember the nights you cried. Gratitude preserves victory. Dependence sustains promotion. The same God who troubles your enemies must remain the center of your life when peace returns. Do not reduce God to a crisis manager. He is Lord, not an emergency contact. And as days turn into months and months into years, you will notice a change, not just around you, but within you. Things that once intimidated you will no longer move you. Situations that once broke you will no longer define you. Not because you are stronger in yourself, but because you are anchored in God. That anchoring is the true victory. When storms come and you remain standing, when trouble rises and you remain clear, when opposition speaks and you remain aligned, then you know that something has shifted permanently. This is the journey of faith, not the absence of trouble, but the presence of God in the midst of it, not a life without enemies, but a life backed by heaven, not comfort, but confidence. And as you continue to walk, pray, discern, and stand, you will see that the prayer, "O God, trouble them that trouble me," is not just a request for intervention. It is a declaration of trust, a proclamation of covenant, a confession that your life is not random, your battles are not meaningless, and your destiny is not negotiable. And as long as you remain yielded, sensitive, obedient, and bold, heaven will continue to respond, angels will continue to move, systems will continue to shift, and the story of your life will keep unfolding with clarity, authority, and purpose. Even as you keep pressing forward, deeper, stronger, wiser, anchored in the assurance that the God who began this work is faithful to sustain it, faithful to defend it, faithful to complete it, and faithful to stand with you in every season, every valley, every height, every unseen battle, every visible victory, until what he has spoken over you is fully established in the earth. So let this be the final posture of your heart, not fear, not vengeance, not weariness, but unwavering confidence in the God who stands as your defender. When trouble rises, you will not collapse into panic, you will rise into alignment. When opposition speaks, you will not answer with bitterness, you will respond with authority. You will walk knowing that your life is hidden in covenant, that your steps are ordered, that your destiny is guarded, and that no resistance appears without permission, and no permission is granted without purpose. And as you continue to stand, pray, obey, and trust, you will see with your own eyes that the God who fights for you does not lose battles, does not abandon his own, and does not retreat in the face of opposition. And you will rest in this unshakable assurance that every hand raised against you will be answered by heaven, every voice speaking against your destiny will be silenced by results, and every season of trouble will ultimately become a testimony that announces to all who see it that there is a God who defends his people, who troubles those that trouble them, and who ensures that what he has ordained will stand, prevail, and shine.